Hi, wherever you're joining me, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to India Tech Report, a podcast dedicated to chronicling and supporting the growth of India's deep tech and climate tech ecosystems, bringing you news, views, and conversations with founders, investors, industry leaders, and other stakeholders. I'm Hari Arakli, and in this episode, I bring you a lightly edited version of a speech made by Dr. S. Somanath, former chairman of the Indian Space Research Organization. Dr. Somanath was speaking at the VC firm Speciale Invest's annual Deep Tech Summit in Chennai. In his talk, Dr. Somanath outlines his views on India's nascent but fast evolving deep tech ecosystem, drawing on his own transformative tenure at the helm of India's space program. He reflects on ISRO's journey from a closed-door organization to an enabler of private space enterprises, catalyzed by the landmark space sector reforms in India in recent years. Dr. Somanath discusses India's ambitious goal to grow its share of the global space economy from 2% to 10%, tapping the space applications opportunities among other avenues, including in critical deep tech domains such as AI, biotechnology, quantum computing, advanced manufacturing, and semiconductor production. He addresses the scaling challenges faced by deep tech startups, emphasizing the crucial role of government as an anchor customer, the need for patient capital from investors, and regulatory reforms that can unlock growth. With India's youth population and vast untapped markets, Dr. Somanath presents a vision where indigenous capability development, academic industry collaboration, and strategic policy interventions can position India as a global deep tech powerhouse.
I'm really inspired by the possibilities that have been unveiled in front of India now because of changing geopolitics. And how many of you watched the launch yesterday? Because there was a cricket match, of course, it was pre-match cricket. I think many of you would have concentrated on that cricket match. So important for us, no? After 50 years, maybe, that we are winning a World Cup match, and congratulations to the team, India. But in between that that match, there was something that's happening yesterday because the launch of a rocket, the LVM-3, carrying the biggest ever communication satellite from India to the space. And the rocket, I was part of that journey of building the rocket. I was the first person there of the rocket. So I was personally getting attached to the rocket, seeing it again at the 8th time, going successfully. The history of ISRO, I think that's the one rocket that has flown flawlessly and possibly going to take our human beings, Indians, to space one day. Build our space station, build a Bharati ISRO, and many other things in the future. I think this is a journey of space program that has really created such an impact in each one of you. I'm really sure about the fact that Chandrayaan-3 landing, many of you would have watched. And how many of you? I think many of you would have watched. I don't want you to raise your hands. I know one of you would have watched. Even if you haven't watched live on that day, I think you would have seen it on the YouTube. And maybe a few days later, you would have watched. On that day, the landing was happening. It was 8 million people seeing the YouTube channel, watching on the YouTube. Plus, there were many others watching on big screens that were set in schools and villages across the country. I think it really created such a great impact in the mind of the people. And what really mattered to me in space was that it was not just this building complex systems that was very interesting. We were going through a reform process in space. And we raised a space sector policy in 2023. But the whole initiation was from the government by 2020. Looking at how the space sector can be really brought to public participation. It was more of a Indian Space Agency was within closed doors, working buildings, rockets and satellites. Now there are young people around. Some of them were my colleagues in ISRO, resigned and started companies much before 2020, but they were not getting the traction needed. I think some of them are here. And they were all worried how it should go in the protective manner of an ISRO organization, how they will really get a mileage. And the world is changing. And I think you are seeing space as coming up, Elon Musk becoming a hero. And we all wanted heroes in India in space sector as well. So they were ready for it. But the government was not coming out with solutions. I think that was the time then the space sector reforms were announced. And I was very happy that to come to the post of the secretary to enable that to happen, to really create a psychological change in the minds of ISRO people, to say that you need to accept startups and companies coming in the space sector and then help them through this process of expanding, building a private space ecosystem in this country. And this really happened. I think it's happening. More need to happen. I think this is something which I am all excited about. I think the space sector is a great example on how indigenous capability are developed in organizations like ISRO. And not only in ISRO, I think you can see that the other related organizations also develop capabilities. The missile development programs of the DRDO was equally criticized. But today, after the event that happened in our borders, I think their limelight of the work that they did in the past is really coming to light, and why it was important for us to have our own capability to build such complex systems. But then all those glory apart, I think what is happening in the future, currently and also in the future, is something that's interesting for all of you. I am very sure about it. This ecosystem is really going to grow substantially. And what exactly are the possibilities of growth? Building rockets, building satellites, deploying applications. I think many people talk to me, when are you going to have the next Elon Musk from India? I think, is there anybody ready here to become the Elon Musk? I think there are maybe some people trying to, thinking themselves to become Elon Musk, or somebody going to launch a constellation of a satellite for either observation or communication like Starlink or OneWeb from this country. I think this is something that we are all waiting for to happen. But there are many challenges for this. I think this is something which I would like to discuss at some point in time. But also see the business side of it. And we all know that space economy is something really complex. We have global space economy is valued at around 500 billion USD. Out of that, our contribution is hardly 2%. All of this we know. And recently we announced that it should grow to something like 10%. And where exactly it is going to grow? It's going to grow in different sectors. And the interconnection between them becomes very important. For example, if you look at the global space economy, we understand almost 60% is in the downstream application side. And in the upstream, building rockets, maybe only 20 or 15%. And rest of that, building space routes, technology, elements, and many other elements are as part of the second part of it. I think it's maybe around another 20%. But if all of these are not present, I think the upstream side is not present. The downstream, we find it extremely difficult. But we are very fortunate as far as India is concerned. When ISRO started the space program, the focus was on the application side. And the capability development of building the satellite, the launch vehicle came much later. I think all of you know that. But in India today, I think if this sector needs to grow, what is important is that we need to not only work on the upstream side of rocket building, spacecraft building, but also need to concentrate on the downstream side where deployment and applications are going to be important. Unless you create demand in various domains of space activity, this sector, next stage of growth to create must create constellations, etc., won't happen. I think this is very important. But I think there is a huge opportunity in building large constellations of satellites, especially small satellites. I am able to see the growth in this sector. About 4 or 5 companies have come up trying to do this type of work in building satellite constellations. In fact, Department of Space also has given a recent contract to almost 3 companies to build small satellite constellations in the country. I think some of them are doing extremely well building spacecrafts in India. Of course, bringing technologies from outside, not a homegrown technology right now. But that's okay. I think to start with, that's okay. But then they are building extremely good small satellite, one of the best in the world, going to be launched in few years of time. Another area is application side. Application side is also showing signs of acceptance in the community. I think India is a vast country. You know that almost 140 crore people. Unlike China, which is going to come down as just now the previous speaker mentioned, we are actually going to grow in numbers. We are going to be 1.6 billion people, possibly stagnating at that and coming down a little later. But our great advantages in terms of the youth which is present here, and an unexplored market in terms of space technology applications. And this is a huge opportunity. I think we realize it, but still there is a lot of work need to be done in creating that application segment in space technology. Currently, the application segment is still in the early phase of deployment, and I must tell you. For example, if you look at Earth observation or IoT or connectivity, education, all of them are still concentrated around the cities and suburbs, not really penetrating into the large mass of the society. I think this is a huge opportunity. And it's up to all those technology people to look at what are the possibilities to really to integrate space with applications. I think this is really important. Let us also tell that deep tech sector in India is not limited to space alone. I think let me quickly go through the different domains. I think recently it has really come to light that deep tech sector is so important for the nation. If you really want to scale your position in respect to global economy substantially to a higher level, not that you immediately go to number of positions, but there are huge challenges for us. For example, if you look at the AI and related data science related domains, I think the early ones on these domains by the IITs, the industry R&D centers at various institutions, really important. I think we see the benefit of it coming in. Of course, the user segment in the AI systems are really growing, showing significant trend. We also know about the Bharat AI initiatives by IIT Madras and many others, and also the effort to create the large language models incorporating other languages of almost 20 languages of India is really showing a prospectus of deployment immediately. The use of AI for medical diagnostics is something very, very important for the country. You realize that the doctors that are available to help people in this country is really still a scarcity, especially if you look at villages. I think most of the doctors which are produced by our universities normally migrate to towns and cities, and there are not much left in the villages. If you're able to deploy with the our common languages and then deploy the medical AI system across the villages, I think what a transformation can bring. Coupled with diagnostic capabilities which are available in terms of the startups. I think some of you may be a part of that such a journey of building kits and low-cost devices which will be helping to take diagnostic and corresponding medical support. I think this is a great journey with AI possible. Of course, the impact of AI on education as far as this country is concerned is something which I don't want to discuss. Biotechnology is another domain which you see a deep tech connect. I think the many institutions in this country really contributed, especially the Department of Biotechnology, the BERAC program has really triggered the investment in this area. And we see there are huge startups and initiatives in the biotechnology sector, which is something very, very promising. I think the biomanufacturing and corresponding research in producing enzymes and chemicals, biomolecule creation is really medicines synthesis. Of course, India is a great nation as far as generic medicine production is concerned, as far as export is concerned. But in terms of vaccines and higher impactful medicine synthesis, I think we still lag, but we have a great opportunity in front of us. Look at manufacturing. I think this is just now mentioned that space and manufacturing is somewhere there is a great connection. When I was in ISRO, I think one of the capabilities that we put effort is to create advanced manufacturing capabilities in this country to support space program. Many of you may not know that what we manufacture, spacecrafts or rockets or systems, are all done in industry. And when we started this program long back in SLV3 project itself, when Abdul Kalam was the project director, he told the team that we need to develop this ecosystem of manufacturing in the country. And we went around and there were none, including people to build composite products, steel manufacturers, aluminum structures. All of this were done during even in SLV primary industry. And they were only learning how to do this type of work, welding, riveting, sheet metal work, complex manufacturing of precision components, ceramics, glasses. All of this were done in the industry. Today we are very proud that we developed almost 500 own industries in this country to support space program. Today they become a supplier approach chain for anyone who wants to build space system. They are available today. But the world is changing very fast. I think new domains of high-end manufacturing is coming in, and the transformation that is required in the manufacturing sector is still take on. I think this is one great opportunity for all of you to look at advanced manufacturing combined with domains like additive manufacturing, how it's going to transform this sector. And we are seeing signs of it. I think some of the R&D centers of additive manufacturing, especially at the Indian Institute of Technology, we have some in ISRO, which is a very great capability. We have some in other national laboratories who are working on this domain, especially looking at the metallurgy, machine building, manufacturing of components and parts, and some of the startups even building rocket engines using additive manufacturing. I think this additive manufacturing is only one domain of it, but then advanced manufacturing per se becomes very important. What exactly are the advanced manufacturing? We know that it is integrating cyber physical systems into manufacturing, like sensors, looking at machines, looking at overall programming from product engineering to production, IoT-based devices, looking at machines and becoming more of automated rather than sequential manufacturing approaches, especially for precision components. But when you look at even spacecraft manufacturing, I have seen some of the industries who are trying to build complex small satellites. They're building a very lean, advanced manufacturing-based industry ecosystem to build it, even in India. I think this is really a huge opportunity, how we really create next phase of advanced manufacturing. And we talked about China just now about the capabilities of manufacturing. They are really splendid in terms of the skills that they have. For example, one example I want to take as far as China is concerned is about the tooling capability. In India, I think we see the tooling capabilities very, very less. For example, if you want to make a product and how do you want to source the tooling, we may find any designers of tooling. So I was suggesting that for India, for the next phase of advanced manufacturing, you need to create skill sets in various domains. For example, how to design a tooling for a process. The training institutions, the skilling places, prototyping and building those ecosystems is really huge for us. Possibly a company who can actually do services as far as tooling is a possibility for the next phase of manufacturing. Robotic and automation is really important, especially building manufacturing of system connected to sensors and robots. Managing the whole supply chain for just-in-time manufacturing support. I think all of this become part of the advanced manufacturing capability. Cyber physical systems are really becoming very, very important, especially with the work that is done in many of the institutions in the country. IIT Hyderabad leads this, NITs, others, CDAC, Samir, and many other private R&D initiatives are really building the gaps between the physical systems like the machines, the computers, sensors, and the software. I think all of these are getting integrated in a very effective manner, which will create what I mentioned, the Industry 4.0 or even IoT or advanced manufacturing capability. I think this becomes important, especially in the emergence of domains like automated cars, I think driverless cars, drones, and also the traffic management. All of them becomes now a cyber physical problem. Especially for defense sector, I think the cyber physical world is so important. The weapons management, stores management, personal connectivity, data from space and its infusion into the logistics. I think all of this becomes a cyber physical problem, and how we really work in this domain becomes important. I think there are many domains where deep tech contributions are really going to happen, but then the next phase of investment and the next phase of opportunity to create new business and industry in various sectors, something which I would like to analyze and then tell you and conclude my talk. For example, if I summarize what I said till now, space, technology-related systems, applications, AI becomes an important area. Bio and manufacturing related becomes an important domain. Quantum, of course, this is another important domain which I just missed. I think the government participation in quantum missions are really significant. Almost 6,000 crores have government invested or assured to develop quantum capabilities, and within a few years of time, we expect at least domains like quantum cryptography, quantum communication, and maybe in the compute domain, maybe the early steps will happen. I think this is one of the domains that is going to really important for us for secure communication and security. Of course, one important domain I think this is related to chips manufacturing. I think this microelectronics is so important for the domains that we are talking about, space and cyber physical system, IoT, and advanced manufacturing. Even for automation chips are very important. I think this is a domain that India did not venture in the early phase of the chip development. And today, I think the initiatives of government is really making headways. Though we may not see an advanced chip manufacturing capability in terms of 73 micron that area, possibly in next 10 years, we may not ever see here unless there is going to be a partnership between those companies and Indian companies who are going to establish those capabilities here. But at least for a larger node capability will be built now. First for packaging and later for wafers production of maybe 60, 90 nanometers capability. Possibly it may come up in the next few years. This is, I really hope. But this will serve much of the sectors. I think this, when it really happens, what next is something which we need to analyze, and then if they really develop, whether they will be able to survive, whether they will be able to produce enough quantity and meet the market demand, and whether Indian market and related markets will be able to serve them to absorb this production that is going to happen. That's a huge question we need to address. So if you really analyze this type of deep technology sectors emerging, it really becomes a huge opportunity for all of you. And what exactly are the challenges in building this ecosystem to scale? I think all of us know that all of them are existing in the form of demonstration, small scale activities. But in terms of business and really creating huge returns, the ecosystem still not support. For example, if you look at space also, you see rocket launches. It doesn't happen in numbers in India. We hardly launch about 5 to 6 launches in a year. Our number of spacecrafts built in India are hardly less than 10 in a year. And even if you look at the missile production, defense production, it's almost in terms of scale, in terms of orders, for those who invest in building orders, but you don't see them in numbers. If you look at even in drone companies, I have been discussing with drone companies. I think there are huge challenges. There is a huge number of drone development happening, but in terms of numbers that need to be ordered for them to assure production, it's not visible. So the deep tech companies, once you start investing and creating the capability, the whole question of scaling and producing in numbers to make a sustained production is one of the important questions that we need to address at this moment. And I see there is a possibility, there is a light in front of us. I think this is something that all of you need to understand and help to create the ecosystem grow in this sector. For example, for government, I think all of us know that for any nation, really in the deep tech sector, government support is so important. I think this is very key to any deep tech sector. As an anchor customer, government needs to be present. Otherwise, many of these initiatives really won't see the light of the day. Okay. For example, if you really look at the space ecosystem, when I was the secretary, we made a point that though the government was insisting that we must build space ecosystem as a demand-driven approach. Those who are the users must fund, then we will build the rockets and then launch based on the demand profile. And this was a demand for the government. But as already mentioned, that bureaucrats don't understand. You cannot actually build a rocket after based on a demand aggregated. The rocket building takes a huge amount of cycle time. You need to actually build the rocket and be ready. And by the time the user is ready for launch, the rocket must be available. So who will fund that first to build it before the user aggregation really happens? I think this is a huge question that people don't even understand. So you need to actually create first. It's not like automobile creation. You need to build a new automobile and bring it to market and then show people that it is much better than the other automobile, then you will buy. It's not like, but for rocket also the same story applies. You need to build a rocket, you have to launch it, you have to create assurance in the mind of the people. Then there will be user demand for those rockets. I think this is a huge challenge. Even for spacecrafts, you look at it. If you have to build a spacecraft and then deploy it, I think some user will ask you, where is the credential for it? You need to show that you have a capability to build, you have a downstream application developed to show that it will work and it will actually deliver my purpose. I think you need to show it a priori before you actually create the demand and the business case for it. But for such deep tech sectors, the early phase of investment and the early phase of going through this challenge of scaling and showing becomes very important. It is very important for them to really grow to a great scale at some later point in time. So for space sector, for example, those who are building small satellites and small rockets, they are all at the early phase. I think the small satellites or small rockets is not the one which they should actually build. They should build up big rockets and big capabilities at some point in time. For them to scale there, the support required is from investors who are in the not as early investors, but somebody who will be able to have little more patient capital, who will be able to invest there and wait for some time for them to scale and show that demonstration. This becomes very, very key to every deep tech sector. Space is no separate at all for any domains. Unlike to those deep tech sectors, space also has this talent of aggregation. So when I was talking about my role in the government, when I went to government, I told them that it's very important for us to help them to build systems and launch them with government money. So government need to put that money. So I think that is something that was listened, I find successfully. The system government was able to understand, and they funded the whole program today. Today, because of that, I was able to convince the government and build almost 30 satellites from the private. I think this is a huge initiative. And that gave confidence to the designers, builders of satellites to come to India to bring those technologies here. Now they are building the next phase of small satellite. Recently, Space announced that we are going to build a LEO satellite constellation for Earth observation, but that will be funded partially by government. But the investors now, or the builders now said that they don't want the government money. We will be ready to invest that money and build it on our own, because they see the possibility today. They can actually invest and create the scale and then bring business out of it. I think this is a huge change that has really happened. Now look at rockets. I think rockets also now the launches happens only 4 or 5 launches per year. How do you really make it 30, 40, 100 launches in a year? SpaceX recently launched their rocket, and they have actually crossed the total number they had last year. They have 2 more months to go. So that means every year they are writing their new record of launches. You know for whom he is launching? And he is launching most of the satellites for himself. So all the satellites he launched, maybe 80% of them are all Starlink satellites. So he created a business case for himself. He built the rocket, he launches almost 80% of the satellites. Of course, he launches the rocket for others also. So the whole business model for SpaceX of reusability, creating a customer base was so strategically positioned, and now he created the Starlink, and the Starlink becomes an integral part of the global communication network for the US, not for communication alone, but for strategic needs. And now he is looking at how to scale to this next gen to create that same type of demand. Right? You would have all read the story of creating a network for observational satellites to take care about the missiles and things like that. So he's trying to create a new business model. And you look at the next rocket he is building, the big Falcon, which is now going to go to Mars and going to transport humans to space in hundreds and create colonies on Mars. He's talking about it, and he says that he will build that rocket. And I think all of us in the rocket business understand the motive behind it and why he's doing all of this. Because he's creating a business case for himself. And where all he will invest and create this, and who will actually fund him to do all of this? And it is nothing but the investor is going to do that. The whole purpose of doing this business to send humans to Mars and create colonies on a private, though it's actually the money comes from here. And its real purpose of building the rocket is not to send humans to Mars. I think all of us understand that this domain. It's actually to send humans across continents, like aircrafts. And once you have the capability to send to Mars, then he can always send from America to Australia on a rocket flight. And possibly he says that it will be done with the cost of airline fare. And we need to build the confidence of people to climb on their rocket and then travel in a mission like this. And who will actually climb? Nobody. And I think none of us are astronauts. And so we will not be trained enough to return to such a rocket and then go. So you need to teach the rule then. The government need to allow regulation to be tweaked to allow people to climb without serious training. I think this becomes the next question. Now you are all facing the challenge of becoming drone transportation. You know that the drones are diverse and personal transportation becomes a possibility. At least 2 or 3 people can actually drive on a drone. Now the question asked recently, one of the meeting discussion, the question asked is, how many pilots should be there in the drone? As per the regulation of DTC, they say 2 people should be there. So once you have 2 pilots sitting there, then who is there to travel in a drone? So unless you keep those government rules and policies, I think the scaling will not happen. So Elon Musk was really trying to do that, speaking of the government rules to allow people to travel on those big Falcon rocket. Same type of tweaking and policy interventions are important for us if you really want to scale up. I was only trying to say that for India also, if you really want to scale up, in deep technology sector, we need to work behind the scene to create those rules and regulations in many sectors. So it is equally important in biotechnology. We realize that today biotechnology research is really hampered by the regulatory processes. It is equally important for regulatory process to become ease that space sector, to build bigger rockets, to create new launch pads, to launch them, to create independent constellations that operate, frequency management, orbital management, all of this becomes important. And also supply chain, technology acquisition, independent manufacturing, I think this is also important. I think it's so important at this moment to bring in technologies. I think if you really want to look at high technology domain like space, bringing technology at this moment seems to be very, very advantageous. Some of the technologies developed in-house could be really great, but I see there is a huge possibility that you can actually bring in technologies and help them. So since my time is short, let me also tell some of you that the deep tech investment is really growing in India. I think all of you know that the deep tech sector has really shown the twofold increase in the last years. And I'm really hopeful that the deep tech sector understand the demand of the sector very well. What exactly are the demand? Of course, I said that the early creation of scale is not easy for, because the demand for the business will come much later once you have shown the proof of the whole design. It is on the table. Yeah, we are able to build it. We are able to show the examples. Then there will be takers for it. I think this is very important. And so the support of investors in the early phase, little more patience is needed. The money to be there for little longer than that you expect. I think this is one of the important qualities that is needed. Second, of course, is in terms of your ability to change government policies. I think this is also important. If you really want to scale without the change the policies, at least in the few sectors, the real scaling will not happen. Third part is government to become anchor customers. I think this is also equally important. I think most of the deep tech sectors requires government to come in, and it cannot be done by private alone. I think this requires a coordinated efforts in the government, especially the domains of defense. I think many of the industries who are getting into the defense manufacturing find it extremely difficult to find a sustained order. I think this becomes a major problem for many of the companies. I think we need to create policies that will allow those who are investing in deep tech sector for over a long period of time, they can assure orders, etc. Lastly is about the technology IP-based development. I think this is also important in the deep tech sector. We really monetize on the work that you do only if you create your own IP. But initially that could be a huge challenge, but then I believe that it is really possible. It is happening at many places. Of course, the complex systems like rocket engines or control systems, specifically in the early phase, you may really acquire. But I'm very sure Indian ideas, Indian mindsets can actually do this in a brilliant way. So we hope that these deep tech ideas, deep tech possibilities really encourages me to continue and work in space sector. Recently, I have moved over to an academics. Why this academics is very important? Because we want to make use of the changes that are happening globally and across the globe, primarily to tap the talents that are available outside to the country. I'm part of the university in Bangalore to build this tech and R&D ecosystem. While we work on deep tech technology, connecting with the institutions and research laboratories becomes equally important. I think we need to work on this. China's story, my previous speaker mentioned about the transition of agriculture to labor to industry production is one side of the story. But the other side of the story is in the academics and research, where they focused and concentrated on creating universities and support the universities from industry in a significant way to create the quality change in the research ecosystem in the country. I think this is also needed if you really have to scale our deep tech technologies ecosystem, connect between research labs, their participation in the ideation, scaling in the early phase, and movement of people across institutions and industries' role in defining and supporting this activity becomes equally important. I see the great possibility happening, and the deep tech sector became one of the vibrant area. I think one of you really are change makers at this moment. I am really happy and to speak a few points about this in this emerging domain, and wish that from the service and IT sector, which generally has been a very comfortable place for all of you to put money in, I think the comfort level is now changing a little bit. So you are also getting into the little uncomfortable domain to invest. I think it is worth taking that step of faith, the leap of faith I won't call rather. But once you do that, I think we will really have an activity which will really show the results maybe a few years down the line. At this moment, it is showing signs. And if you have to make this change in India, I think we are the people to make that change. And I am really part of that change as well. Even after my retirement, I continue to contribute to that domain and happy to be part of that journey. Thank you so much and all that.
That's it for today. You can find links to Dr. Somanath's bio and Speciale Invest's website in the show notes, wherever you get your podcasts. To support my work, please subscribe to my posts at indiatechreport.in. I'm Hari Arakali. Thank you for listening.